So we made it to the final part, part 9 of the red tree, where we're going to finish off this little painting today. I'm still working here on the sky holes. In other words, adding some featheriness and looseness to the tree and redefining its shape. We did a lot of the base work to it, put a lot of different colors in there, and then we let it dry for a while. This little red tree is our focal point, so we want to make sure it has the most interest and draws your eye. So I put that blue sky color in, and then of course since this is the horizon, it's lighter than the rest of the painting, so I added a little white on there to blend that in as well. I had the tree almost a half circle kind of a form before, so I'm trying to pretty drastically alter that shape and give it a more natural look. Again, taking my using the reference photo to do that and following the shape of it mostly. We talked about in the last video how when you're doing the sky holes, the interior sky holes, the color needs to be a little bit darker than the sky for it to look right. So, but when you get along the edge of the tree, then you gotta lighten it up again a little bit so that it matches the sky color that you have going on. Mixing up a little more of my dark to just continue to tap in some more sky and reshape the general form of the tree. I'm thinking about the way the branches grow without trying to define any specific branch. Again, when you look at your reference photo and squint your eyes, you can get a better feel for it without getting caught up in all the detail. Now I'm mixing a darker bluish gray color, which would be more like the color of that hill. So now we're actually making hill holes, to be technical, I guess, but adding some of that hill color in to make this side of the tree a little lighter and airier as well, and give it more shape. I use mostly the tip of my brush when I'm doing this and dab it in there. I don't want a real hard edge. I'm trying to keep the edge a little bit light, a little bit soft. Kind of sculpting the tree there. And you got to be a little bit lighter once you get out into the actual sky. So I added some white back in. Also keeping the paint fairly thick and lightly going over those layers, trying to get that coverage because that's a pretty dark color underneath it. If you brush too strongly, you're just going to uncover those dark layers again. So I'm laying that thicker paint on top. When you get down to the end like this, there's a lot of looking time and just seeing what catches your eye and what needs to be adjusted. Okay, picking up my Alizarin Crimson Quin Gold with a little bit of Ultramarine Blue to it, which is my tree color in different variations of that color. So I'm rolling back in this sort of more vivid, bright color, more chromatic color, adding some, making that tree sparkle a little more. It's a dark color, but it's not very gray. It's a pretty bright chromatic color. So that's always the color you're going to get between the shadows and the highlights. You're going to get that more bright chromatic color. So that's what I'm adding back in there. Getting that feathery look of the edges of those branches, using the side of my brush and pushing it upwards a little bit. Now I'm adding a little more blue to turn it more towards the shadow color. This side of the tree, remember the light is coming from the left-hand side, so this side of the tree is going to be more in shadow in general. So I'm using more of that shadow color. Just trying to get a hint of foliage. Again, tapping the side of the brush to make a branch shape, laying the brush down, rolling it and lifting it, and using the tip to define little edges there. Since this is my focal point, you know, I'm letting it have more hard edges, more defined edges to it. So that's one of the ways we draw attention to our focal point. Contrast between dark and light, more chromatic color, more color contrast between complementary colors, and more hard edges. So I'm pretty happy with the edges of those trees now. Now I think I'm going to go in with a lighter, brighter color. I've got those darks in there pretty well now. Where is that sunlight hitting my tree? Using my Quin Gold and my Alizarin Crimson again, but heavier on the Quin Gold and even a little cadmium yellow. And this will be the highlighted portions of the tree. Again, thinking about where my light is. So I'm touching this color onto the sunlight side of the tree. A little bit yellow. Again, you have to be careful not to put too much paint on your brush, or you'll just cover up all your the layers that you already had in there. Notice I moved over to a new pile to push my color in a different direction in this pile. More yellow, using a little bit of Quin Magenta, which is going to give me an even pinker, brighter color. And there you notice I put some magenta and some light, and so I basically have those three colors there in my pile, and then I just ran my brush across all three colors. So I have a little bit of all three of those colors on my brush. So as I roll it, I'm going to get this variation of color. I'm using that also in my grasses here to add that color, that three color mixture there to the grasses. I use that technique quite a bit, where I'll put three different colors there in the pile, brush my brush across it so that I have basically three unmixed colors on my brush. And they'll mix a little bit as you manipulate your brush, but you'll also get little touches of those separate colors in a very random way, which is nice. So still thinking about where the light's hitting the tree, but being careful not to cover up the sky holes I just put in. I want to keep that loose airiness. Coming back in now with my clean brush, soften that edge a little bit. Now I'm coming back in with some of my shadow color, as I have that pretty big glob of light right there that wasn't making me happy. So I'm going to push my brush back up into that light area to break that up a little bit. Adding some of that same color in the shadow area of my bushes. So I want to make sure that that there's enough weight there in that bush area to balance my painting. Okay, I think we're pretty close to being done with our little painting. Adding some more shadow color and that dark in a shape that actually points back into our focal point. Continuing to add some of that reddish shadow color into my shadows. I always like to have a little bit of red in my darkest darks, and especially when that red is against the green foliage. Okay? I think I'm pretty happy with this. And in a moment here, I'm going to show you the comparison of our reference photo to our finished painting, and we can talk a little bit about what we changed about the reference photo, what we used, and what we altered. Okay, here's our finished painting. It's a little easier to see here too. And you notice how we pushed the reds of the tree. We added that a little darker and a little brighter in the right-hand corner. We made our greens more chromatic, and we pushed those mountains back a little bit, made them a little more secondary by giving them a lighter bluish purple tint, which also sets off the color of the tree better. So I hope you enjoyed this little demo, and I hope you join me on paintwithkarenalari.com.